Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Carroll. An American history professor named Paul Kosuk was absolutely fascinated by ancient settlements, like I'm sure a lot of us are. But this passion led to him devoting much of his time to studying in Peru, which has such an incredibly rich history. In 1948, while in Peru, Paul made the discovery he had been waiting for when he came across the dry remains of an ancient city. The remains were carbon dated and placed to be about 5,000 years old. The city of Carroll was once the home to around 3,000 inhabitants pre-Inca, and this was already a thriving location while the pyramids were being built. That is how old the settlement is. It appeared to be quite a peaceful place as there were no obvious signs of battles or weapons, but among the remains were homes, plazas, temples, and even an amphitheater. It is said that the city was abandoned in 2000 BC, and in 2009 AD it was made a World Heritage Site. In our number 9 spot today, we have Iram of the Pillars. This place is also known as Atlantis of the Sands, and it is a lost city or area that is spoken of in the Quran. In the Quran, it is said to be a place that is full of lofty buildings, and it was populated by a group known as Ad. This group had turned away from Allah, so the prophet Hud was sent to summon them back. The people did not listen or obey, and as a result, it is said that they were punished with a sandstorm being sent to the area for 7 days and 7 nights. In the end, the city is said to have vanished beneath the sands as if it never even existed. In the 1990s, a team, which was led by Nicholas Clapp, who is an amateur archaeologist and filmmaker, announced that they had found this lost city. It is said that this was done using NASA's remote sensing satellites, ground-penetrating radar, and images taken by the Space Shuttle Challenger. These tools gave them the opportunity to see old camel trade routes and where they all once converged. This point is a well-known area, and once excavated, it is said to have revealed the area known as Iram of the Pillars. In our number 8 spot today, we have Heraklion. Also known as Thonis to the Egyptians, this was an ancient city that was located near the mouth of the Nile River. Greek legend says that this was the city where Hercules took his first steps into Africa, as well as the place where Paris hid Helen before the Trojan War began. This is all to say that, to legend, the city was super important, but aside from legend, no one knew where this place was or how to find it. Well, just over 2,000 years ago, it turns out that either an earthquake, a tsunami, or a combination of the two hit the city and submerged it underwater. It used to be believed that Thonis and Heraklion were two separate places and that they were both located on what is now Egyptian mainland, but neither of those things turned out to be true. In reality, in 1999, after 5 years of searching, archaeologist Frank Gaudio located the ruins of the city underwater as they had been submerged in the ocean. Since then, excavations and explorations of the ancient city have taken place, and it was stocked full of some incredibly cool treasures from thousands of years ago. In 2010, a type of ancient Nile riverboat was found here, and even not too long ago, in August of 2021, it was announced that wicker baskets that contained fruits of the doom palm tree, as well as grape seeds that date back to the earliest 4th century BC, had been found among the ruins. In our number 7 spot today, we have Arctic hyenas. Changing it up a bit to ancient remains. Only a few years ago, scientists discovered teeth. Ancient teeth from Arctic hyenas. When you think of hyenas, you wouldn't ever imagine that they once roamed over Europe and Asia, but 5 million years ago, that was normal everyday life for these bad boys. Remains of these Arctic beasts have been found mainly in the Yukon permafrost. Evolutionary biologist Jack Zhang studies prehistoric carnivores, and he knew within minutes that these recent Yukon molars belonged to Arctic hyenas, aka Chasmaporthets. We'll go with that. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Crusader Sword. Get your goggles on for this next one, folks. We are going deep. I found a few shells in my life, but never a sword that once belonged to a Crusader knight. That's just next level. An Israeli scuba diver, not even that far experienced, ended up stumbling across one of the coolest discoveries in 2021. Shlomi Katzin was diving off the Carmel coast in Israel when this peculiar shape caught their eye. As if a Crusader sword wasn't enough, the diver also found anchors, ancient stones, pottery fragments, all from around 900 years ago. I wouldn't even notice this. It's covered in barnacles. I wouldn't even dare go near it to begin with. Kudos. Great catch. In our number 5 spot today, we have toxic waste. Despite what Smash Mouth preaches, all that glitters is not gold. Sometimes we find ancient swords, and sometimes we find literal barrels of waste. This dump site here was first discovered off the coast of LA, 3,000 feet deep, hiding in plain sight. These ROVs found roughly 27,000 barrels of toxic waste. This feels like a Simpsons episode. It's absolutely insane. What a horrible discovery. The 2021 find was deemed staggering. Yeah, that's a word you can say, for sure. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mohenjo-Daro. This is a location whose name is said to roughly translate to, quote, Mound of the Dead Men. This is one of the world's oldest urban settlements, as it was found and built somewhere around 2600 to 2500 BC in what is now Pakistan, but it was abandoned in the 19th century BC as the civilization that called this place home declined. For almost 4,000 years, this site was seemingly forgotten about, and the remains of it were undocumented until an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India, R.D. Banerjee, visited the site in 1920 and found a flint scraper which convinced him of the site's history. From here, excavations of the site began, and as of the 1980s, it was named a World Heritage Site. In our number 3 spot today, we have Wolverine Fish. Hugh Jackman, if you're watching, this one's for you. This year alone, there have been over 212 discoveries of brand new freshwater fish. We love a new fish. That's super exciting. One of which is the X-Men inspired Hopalensistris Wolverine. These fish have strong lateral curved spikes called odontos tucked under their gills. They can extend and jab their prey with prongs, hence why the name Wolverine is added to the fish's name. It's kind of cute, it has the claws, which is terrifying, sure, but he's okay. I do kinda love him. In our number 2 spot today, we have the million-year-old plant. Back in 2019 in Greenland, a preserved fossil of a million-year-old plant was discovered. This was found under the ice near a secret Cold War military camp. An ancient flower founded a Cold War military camp. What a headline. In 1959, Project Iceworm was underway, I have mentioned this before, and that in itself is a pretty bizarre frozen feature in history. Eventually, the project was scrapped and it was abandoned, but cut to 2019, it was rediscovered, and scientists at the University of Vermont found parts of a million-year-old plant. Not what you'd expect to find under a secret Cold War base. You know, the fragments were so well preserved that it looked like it had died recently. Not, you know, a million years ago. Studying these plants can provide clues on our future and where our current plants might just end up. In our number 1 spot today, we have Ice Age art. Well, to end off this list, we have some ancient artwork. This Ice Age masterpiece was painted in the Colombian Amazon. The thing is, unlike other drawings found on the ceilings of tombs, this canvas stretches about 8 miles. It's incredibly long for an ancient painting, and for a modern painting, now that I think of it. These drawings date back to 12,000 years ago, near the end of the last ice age. These were found in 2018, but it was only last year when they went public with the findings. The findings being paintings of elephants, giant sloths, horses, snakes, birds, and deer. This is now one of the largest collections of rock art in South America.
Kicking off the list at number 10, new tombs. Fresh off the press, folks, Egypt announced only yesterday Egypt, they announced it, yeah, just all of them as a whole. Egypt announced only yesterday that they have discovered 5 ancient tombs in Saqqara. This is fresh news, this is brand new, only a few people know about this. These tombs date back to the time of the Old Kingdom, around 2700 to 2200 BC, so yeah, they're a touch old. The 5 tombs were found northeast of the Pyramid of Menir, a 6th dynasty structure. Now these tombs clearly belonged to a group of people with high value. They were obviously officials. Mustafa al-Waziri, head of Egypt's Supreme Antiquities Council, has since released additional information on who the tombs belong to. How fun is that? That's how fast we're getting to the bottom of this already. This happened like yesterday, and we already know who's in the tombs? Okay, great work. The first one belonged to an ancient official named Iri. There's a deep burial shaft that leads down to a chamber filled with funerary decorations, offering tables, the 7 oils. It looked completely untouched. Well, it was. And of course, there was also a limestone sarcophagus. Can't have a tomb without a sarcophagus or two. Number 9, Queen Nerit. Just over a year ago, the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities announced the discovery of Queen Nerit, the wife of one King Teddy. Yeah, here we go, aka the first pharaoh of Egypt's 6th dynasty. They found her burial shaft. There were coffins, of course mummies, artifacts, all dating back to the New Kingdom, meaning the Saqqara necropolis was used in the late period, but now apparently it was also used in the New Kingdom as well. That's the news to us. Perhaps the most questionable find was a 4-meter long scroll. That was the 17th chapter of the Book of the Dead. Yeah, nothing like finding a chapter of your favorite book. You're like, where's the rest? Let's find them. It's like a National Treasure movie, only haunting. As well as funerary masks, miniature boats, and 50 coffins. A lot of coffins in this one. Again, this is the first time 3,000-year-old coffins were found in the Saqqara necropolis. This is huge. Number 8, mummified lion cub. Back in 2019, Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb was released, and honestly, what a weekend that was. That was a good time. I remember that one. If you haven't checked it out, I implore you to do so. Officials discovered a 4,400-year-old tomb that belonged to a man named Wache at the Saqqara necropolis. This was pretty close to Cairo, only 30 kilometers away, so you can only imagine this commute ages ago and how beautiful it must have been. This tomb was full of incredible artifacts, mummified animals even. There was a lion cub and over 3,000 ancient artifacts. A lot of stuff, jam-packed this one. When digging up our past, it's tricky because you don't want to ruin any funerary decorations and anything like that and be disrespectful, but you also want to know who these people were. We want to know about our history, what happened, what they stood for before their passing, and why they were so important in the first place. Wache and his family remains were studied, and it appears malaria claimed the lives of him and his entire family. This is also the first mummified cub we've ever found in history, so as far as findings go, this one was jam-packed with history. Number 7, King Tuts artifacts. The new Grand Egyptian Museum was set to open in 2018, and then finally it did come 2021. And while that's quite recent, the contents displayed inside certainly are not. For the first time in history, King Tut's ancient belongings, all of them, all the artifacts discovered with him, will be on display. See, prior to this museum being open, we only saw around 150 artifacts from his tomb. They all took pieces on tour, a big Egyptian mummy tour, you know. It was like Kiss's final reunion tour, then also King Tuts. You're like, oh, who do I see? Ooh. But now this museum, this grand museum, will house thousands of artifacts. That's over 7,000 square meters as well, might I add. What a display this is. If you have a chance to visit the Grand Egyptian Museum, or if you saw this King Tut World Tour, I'm jealous. I'm very jealous. We have one museum in Toronto, but it's, you know, the Egypt section there is. Number 6, engraved warnings. It's a part 3, so of course we have to include some Paris catacomb creepiness. Yeah, as far as old tombs go, that one's pretty haunting, I'd say, no? These catacombs date back to the late 1700s. Not so ancient, but give me a break, okay? It's part 3, I'm doing my best. When the city's cemeteries were starting to fill up, and I mean that in a literal sense, officials began moving contents from all over to these abandoned mines. The catacombs were opened officially in 1809. What a fun family excursion that must have been. Nice. That or the Wax Museum. They're like, let's take the kids this way. Let's go this way. They designed the catacombs with the walls of skulls to ensure that visitors would meditate on death. That's the whole vibe. Let's go meditate and think about death for a bit in the walls of skulls. Yeah, I'm sure everybody who visits thinks of nothing else. Pretty confident there. In order to ensure this was the vibe of the room, there's a phrase carved above the entrance, and it translates to, "Stop, this is the Empire of the Dead." I would be like, okay, no problem. Number 5, necklace from Egyptian afterlife. We're all curious what happens after you die, right? But nobody celebrates the end of your days like the ancient Egyptians. They go hard. They really go for it. Like I mentioned earlier, they would paint doors, leave valuables. Any new tomb we discover has thousands of artifacts, hints rather to what lies beyond. An ancient necropolis was discovered only a few years ago in, of course, Egypt, and it contains dozens of coffins and a necklace that holds a message from the afterlife. Okay, now we're talking. This site is around 2,000 years old, and they're in the process of excavating it right now as we speak. But so far, the tombs and artifacts found belong to an ancient priestess. Nice. A message from the afterlife is pretty spectacular. We want that, we want that. Don't let Rose from Titanic near that one, or else you know what she'll do with the necklace. You know what she likes doing. Number 4, bone compass. Okay, just because we've been talking about graves does not mean these messages or anything have to be written or drawn. Sometimes it can be as simple as leaving animal bones on the ground. Yeah, that ought to speak for itself more than any art. If you see that, you're on your way. I'm not gonna be grave robbing if there's a big old pile of bones oddly placed. What do you guys like, White Walkers, Game of Thrones? What is this? This is terrifying. In St. Augustine, for example, the remains of a donkey were found buried underground. Judging from the skull, it had been clearly hunted down by humans at the time. That's not the weird part here. The weird part is that all these bones have been carefully separated. There's no marks to suggest that any tools were used, so gross, for one, but researchers believe that this wasn't even used for food. The limbs were placed to point north and south. They used this donkey as a compass. How rude is that? Donkeys in the area of Florida in the 17th century, that's not bizarre at all. But the way these bones were laid out, something's afoot here. What's the message here? I mean, obviously besides that way's north. Is there any other message if that? Or were people just bored back in the day? Number 3, mythical carvings. Back in 2014, a 17-year-old cemetery was discovered along the Silk Road, which are these ancient ancient highways rather, connecting China and the Roman Empire. In the city of Kucha, now northwest China, this cemetery was found along with 10 ancient tombs, one of which was referred to as M3. All these tombs get their cool nicknames like KB55, that's pretty good. M3, short. Sounds very British. M3, sounds like a British secret agent. M3 didn't have any haunting messages this time around, but it did contain several carvings of mythical creatures. Some creatures that don't even exist. There's a white tiger of the west, the black turtle of the north, the vermilion bird of the south, so far so recognizable, and then there's the azure dragon of the east. Could this mean that dragons are very real? Were very real? Are? I vote R. Please be real. These mythical carvings represent different seasons in the heavens, but what could the other 6 carvings even mean? Maybe the depictions of hell? Number 2, chalk drum. Deemed one of the most important pieces of prehistoric art, this chalk drum is 5,000 years old. It was first discovered by archaeologists in England back in 2018. It was found with the remains of 3 humans. It was featured in the World of Stonehenge exhibition. It sounds like an instrument, but really this chalk drum was used as an art piece. Almost like all of our drum sets from when we grew up. I'm like, oh, we don't actually play that, it's just for show. Yeah, I can't do anything on it. That guitar too, can't play that, just for show. Maybe time of your life if you're lucky, on a good day, but for the most part, for show. British Museum project curator recalls the findings as remarkable, of course. This was the artistic language throughout the British Isles 5,000 years ago. Radiocarbon dates back to 2890 BC, around the same time of the construction of Stonehenge. So yeah, pretty old. A chalk ball and bone pin were also found at the site, so again, pretty loaded discovery. And finally, coming in at number 1, Celtic Warrior Shield. This one was referred to as the most important British Celtic art object of the millennium, which not a bad title at all. An Iron Age chariot burial was discovered in Yorkshire a few years ago, and researchers were excavating a house development originally in Pocklington, and then they find a soldier's tomb. Nice. Also, what's the asking price? The soldier was laid on a chariot with a Celtic shield over top. The shield was dated back to 175 BC. See, most Iron Age shields up until this point didn't have scalloped edges, but this one did. Yeah, we thought metal shields were used only for ceremonies, but this one has been repaired. There are clear sword marks. It had been used many a times in battles. My arm gets tired in class if I raise it for too long, you know? I have to like do the old switcheroo or like hold it up, one of these. This guy was holding a metal shield up all day long. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna go do 1,000 push-ups now and fix that light that I moved when I did that hand bit.